My name is Andy Rowell, and this is my lecture entitled Nehemiah, Good Leadership in Response to Destruction. Disgust with leadership. That's a very common feeling for people who see the chaos and harm caused by leaders. And so it leads to some people saying, would it not be better for people to just leave everyone alone? Doesn't power corrupt? And absolute power corrupts absolutely. Isn't it better to be cynical and to be wary of leadership? However, we see in Nehemiah an example of a leader in the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, who leads well, who is a good example of good leadership. We see this right away in Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 3, where Nehemiah tells the story, and he says, "They said to me, those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire." He is concerned by the destruction around him. And so a different response to seeing the chaos and destruction that we see in our world today, yes, caused by tyrants and dictators and abusers, but all sorts of other types of pain and disorder and people who have been harmed, that can also lead us to engage in leadership rather than disengage and withdraw. I myself, when I think about the walls of Jerusalem that were crumbling, that had broken down, the gates have been burned with fire. I think about house projects. I think about broken walls and fences that I've had to repair because the dog dug a hole under a fence, or the fence blew down, those sort of things. I think about rebuilding after a fire that sometimes has to happen where a garage is rebuilt. Have you ever survived something, but then the dangers kept coming? That's what we'll see in the story of Nehemiah, that he begins to fix something, but there are more and more issues that come up as he's made progress. And so he makes progress, but then there are more challenges that come up, and that's quite normal in leadership. Oftentimes, that's exactly what leadership is. Leaders are frustrated by the problem after we've already resolved something, then another problem occurs. We want to get on to whatever was on our to-do list, whatever we had intended to do, but often those problem solving is really part of working with people to achieve the purposes of the organization, is to address the problems that emerge. And if we don't address things, things will get worse. That's a way to work on things in our work life or at home on home projects. That if we don't do it, or we don't work with other people to make progress, if we don't take some grit and address it, it will not fix itself. And so that's this kind of motivation to keep going. Perseverance is a really important aspect of leadership. So when we just think about the challenges of leadership, we may be thinking about the broken walls, the people we know about who have been harmed that need restoration. So those could be financial problems, home improvement issues, physical illness or injuries that people that need restoration, relational concerns about our world today. There's lots of broken walls and victims out there. And that's really a good start to understanding why leadership. Because God wants to protect and restore vulnerable people, we can prayerfully act. That's one way of describing the Nehemiah story, one way of describing our response to the Nehemiah story as well. That God loves people, that God cares about people, and therefore we might prayerfully act. And I say prayerfully so that we'd be oriented and not just acting in a way that does more harm than good, but is uh, noting and reflecting that we might be working alongside what God would want us to do. This story takes place in 445 BC. There was exile from Jerusalem in 586, so about a century, 140 years earlier. There had been the people had been picked up and moved. They had been taken out of Jerusalem, and so all that was left were some poor people and kind of the rubble of Jerusalem. And what we see here in the book of Nehemiah is a contrast to the idolatrous kings of Israel and Judah. There are some good kings and some bad kings. We see a lot of good king material here. He's not a king, but we see him almost learning from the good and bad kings of Israel and Judah. And we see also him in contrast to the conquering, kings of Babylon and Persia as well. So Nehemiah really is a breath of fresh air when we get to him at that point in the Hebrew Bible. So here, I just want to introduce you to how I would think about leadership. This is a little bit subjective. This is a little bit me just picking things from the Nehemiah story that I notice about him as a leader. But I think these may be useful as you just read Nehemiah yourself, as you think about leadership, to kind of have a role model or an example of what it might mean to be a leader who is attentive to God, who does that prayerful action, a moral leader that we would want to emulate. So the first thing Nehemiah does is he cares enough to ask questions. Nehemiah 1, verse 2, I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that had survived the exile and also about Jerusalem. Just the listening, the engagement to say, oh, what's happening with that issue? Who is my neighbor? Who has fallen us on the road here? Not just walking on by, but asking what is going on. And we can't always help. We can't always be of assistance. Oftentimes the problems that we hear about are beyond us, but there's something that a godly person does. They're curious. They're concerned about people who are suffering, and they want to know what's going on because they want to know, like, is it me, Lord? Is there something that I might be able to address and be involved in? And the only way to know that really is to sort of ask and to care about people besides yourself. So the concerned person is kind of the beginning. Again, oftentimes I think about my students who feel like I'm not a leader. I want to be a pastor. I want to be a shepherd. But look, this person who ends up being a very fine leader has that kind of pastoral concern right here at the beginning. Number two, Nehemiah opens himself to feeling compassion. This is related. When he hears these things, when I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. That's from Nehemiah 1:4. And again, notice that the emotion here. Again, we sort of think about leaders as, don't let people see you sweat, don't let anybody, act confident, give off that kind of command that you are confident, that you strut through the world. No, you see here just the reaction, the emotional reaction, just sorrow to say, oh, this is terrible, the stories I'm hearing. It reminds me of when we hear sometimes about um, um, some people suffering in a country. Let's say they've had the heat taken out by bombs or something, and so they're suffering in the cold, and it just makes us sad. It breaks our heart, and maybe we fast, maybe we decide to miss a meal and pray, and we just say, God, this just bothers me. I'm concerned by the suffering that I hear about from these people. So again, just kind of surprising, do you have a weeping leader? That's the second thing that may be surprising and is indicative of actually good leadership. Third, Nehemiah prays because he believes God cares about restoring broken people. Nehemiah 1:5 says, Then I said, Lord, the God of heaven, the great and awesome God, who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and keep his commandments. Note that he knows the character of God. He knows God is going to care about the suffering of these people. And so that is the posture with which he goes to God in prayer, knowing God's understanding of this. 4, Nehemiah recognized that bad behavior by many people led to the trauma and scattering and destruction. Nehemiah 1:6 reads, I confess the sins we Israelites, including myself and my father's family, have committed against you. I just noticed that he takes responsibility. He says it might have been me who contributed to rebelling. I mean, if it was 140 years ago, whatever prompted this exile, the destruction of Jerusalem, that could have been me too. That was my family. And so just that kind of personal awareness of sin, of our, potential for sin, that's a good place. It's kind of a realism about human behavior that we see in a good leader like Nehemiah. And 5, Nehemiah has a history of being trustworthy and cheerful as a cupbearer for the king, so his superior wants to help him when he is sad. Nehemiah 2:1-2 reads, I took the wine and gave it to the king. I had not been sad in his presence before, so the king asked me, Why does your face look so sad when you are not ill? This can be nothing but sadness of heart. And it just strikes me that, what it's really saying here is that Nehemiah is not like Eeyore. He's not a whiny, complainy kind of person who's always negative, who's always pessimistic, who's always down. He's actually more cheerful, helpful, positive. And yet, he is brokenhearted. He can't help from the king that he's received this news, this blow, to hear about the people suffering back in Jerusalem. And so there's something about his countenance, about his face, that the king who cares about him, obviously, who respects him, who inquires and says, I wonder, do you have a broken heart about something? Is there a relationship? Is this a family issue? I'm not sure what he would wonder, but what's wrong? What's wrong, Nehemiah? I just think that's an example to us too, that like it's not that you can never be sad or down or something like that, but a lot of times we're going to want to be um, almost saving that for when it's needed or something like that. We're sad about stuff that's important, and about other things we can be cheerful because that's part of life, is to have that perspective that a lot of things we can be cheerful about and a positive, uplifting presence to those around it. But it doesn't mean to be you always have to be. They have to be Pollyanna, and when things are terrible, 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 you're like, no, everything's fine. No, no, you don't have to act like that. So I just think too here there's this relationship with this king that's obviously positive and is going to prove to be fruitful. Also, I'll note here that Joseph, Moses, Esther, and Daniel were also trusted counselors to kings and pharaohs, but also kept in mind the Jewish people. I just think about how in pastoral ministry, oftentimes you're first a children's ministry person or a youth person, a student ministry pastor, and so you're not the head honcho, and so but you're to be somebody who's in good relationship if possible with the senior pastor, and almost always, even when you're a senior pastor, it's like, do you have a good relationship with your board or your bishop or that sort of thing, your district superintendent, somebody who's over you. So anyway, I think that's related, and I just think there's something too about being a faithful person in a very dark world. So I think about a pastor who, let's say, is in a city, but then in the end, the mayor of that city or the police chief of that city says, I respect that pastor and what they do in their church. I'm trying to, I'm sort of saying mayors and police officers like the kings and pharaohs here, but just this idea of, can we be people of goodwill that they respect our cool head, our care, our consistency. I think that's kind of a sign of godliness throughout the Old Testament, is even though we're not in power, that we are live in such a way that people want to get our advice because they respect how we live and they care about what we have to say. Okay, number 6, Nehemiah shoots up prayers for guidance in the moment, and also has given significant thought to the issue. So one of the things you see throughout the book of Nehemiah is a bunch of little prayers. This is a really great one, though, pictured here. It's really well written. Nehemiah 2, verses 4 and 5. The king said to me, "What is it you want?" Then I prayed to the God of heaven, and I answered the king. I mean, that's a quick one, right? And there's just some real wisdom again there to say, the king's asking, what do I want? Lord, give me wisdom. Well, for this ask to be, not too much that it offends or puts off this person asking, but that is true, and I'm accurate in what I ask for. So I like this, I really do. And he goes on to say, and also I said to him, this is Nehemiah 2:7, if it pleases the king, may I have letters of the governors of Trans-Euphrates, so that they may provide me safe conduct until I arrive in Judah. And may I have a letter to Asaph, keeper of the royal park, so he will give me timber to make beams for the gates of the citadel by the temple and for the city wall and for the residence I will occupy. And what I'm struck by this is that Nehemiah's ready, right? Like, so it's like, okay, if you're asking, I gotta say, if you're asking, what I really need is I need, some sort of permission. I need a written documentation that can show that you're supporting what I'm going to do. So that's what I really need. I need can't remember what those are called, but just, some sort of a visa, I don't know, some sort of a judge's order. But anyway, so he's ready. And then also he wants permission to get some wood that is really needed to make beams for the gates. And he just feels like, that would really make a huge difference if we could get a few of those crucial beams for the gates. Maybe he feels like, hey, the stones we can do, the walls we can do. That I already know how to do. I don't need help with that. But these are things I'm really missing. So the point is, though, that Nehemiah is ready. So I just am wanting to contrast Nehemiah's answer here between the people who are just almost like, um, you know, we'll just pray, we'll just pray or something like that. And it's like, we can also plan and pray, that kind of thing. I mean, often praying actually does make you think about things like letters and wood beams. And I mean, that's one of the beauties of prayer, is that sometimes it does trigger or makes you realize or remember things, and it leads you into action. I mean, that's one of the surprising things, that like God, that's what people say, like God speaks to you. And so you think, so those aren't in contrast, the prayer and the preparation. But I'm just trying to say that, those can go hand in hand. And so you see Nehemiah, who's competent. I mean, I just see some competence here, like some expertise here, that he's been hanging around the king for long enough that he kind of knows how to administrate or something, how to like get stuff done. All right. Number 7, Nehemiah scouts out and researches the devastation, so he knows what he's talking about. So he's arrived. All right, so there's a big, big shift here. He's arrived, and he says, Nehemiah 2:13, by night I went out through the valley gate toward the jackal wall and the dung gate, examining the walls of Jerusalem, which had been broken down, and its gates, which had been destroyed by fire. And so this is just sort of interesting that he goes around at night to kind of, I think, look so that people aren't wondering what he's doing. I mean, if they did see them, this would be all the more suspicious to wonder, what is this guy doing? But he does not want to walk around during the day and have people wondering what he's doing, looking at the holes in the walls. He's going to be accused of being a thief or a burglar, scouting out ways to get through the walls. And instead, he just kind of wants to do his snooping around in a way that doesn't kind of raise a bunch of commotion and suspicion. So I guess I just think about this in terms of doing research. I mean, I don't know that we do it secretly as leaders, but I do think it makes sense. And I've seen leaders often do this sort of thing where they just think like, this is an issue that's coming. Here's an issue that's coming. It's an issue. It's something I need to think through. That I don't know what it'd be, but some theological issue, and they end up. I'll give you an example, I guess. Like women in ministry, this is something I need to think through myself, because I know we're not handling it as well as we could. And so a pastor will like get a bunch of books. They may even interview some people or talk behind the scenes a little bit just before 6 months or a year before they make progress on kind of raising it with a kind of board or that kind of thing. So I just think there's some wisdom here again toward doing the intellectual work ahead of time so you know what you're talking about. There's the spiritual work, which we've talked about here, about prayer and about a heart for the things of God and knowing who God is. And then there's also this kind of work of what God has given us, human agency to act and to look around. And so that's what Nehemiah does here. He walks around and looks at the walls of Jerusalem. All right. And then number 8, Nehemiah invites lots of people to pitch in and do their part of the rebuilding. I mean, this is really great. Leaders lead, people respond to leaders maybe. he's got it in gear. They can see that he's competent. They can see that he's spiritual. They can see something in them. They see that he's worth following. And, he's got enough of a plan. It's a realistic plan. He's got backing for it. And so they replied, let us start rebuilding. So they began this good work. I mean, that's just a beautiful, beautiful line. It's encouraging. I mean, let's start rebuilding. So they began this good work. I just really wish that for you, that would be how you're responded to when you propose something and make good progress and have a good plan, that people say, let's do this. We're on board. Let's do this. And then they begin this good work. And we see a little bit more even details. It's just delightful in chapter 3, where everyone does part of the wall. And here's a quote from Derek Kidner in his commentary about chapter 3. He says, chapter 3 has all the marks of a shared enthusiasm shown in the heterogeneous groups which set to work on their adjacent stretches of wall, some as family units, others by towns, crafts, for example, the goldsmiths and the perfumer verse and the perfumer of verse 8, the trades, for example, the merchants, and callings, the priests, the Levites, the temple servants, and the district officers. One man even mobilized his daughters. And I don't know if you caught all that, but basically what they don't do is they don't do exactly what you think they would do, which would just be like, all right, what's the most mathematically logical way? You live here, so you do, 10 meters, and you live here, so you do 10 meters here. Like they do it in Minneapolis on our sidewalk. Everybody does the sidewalk and you have to pay for it right in front of your house. And that makes sense. And we do that for snow shoveling too. But here, it's more diverse than that. It's more like when you see these like cleanups along highways or something, and it's like some random club or something who has adopted this piece of the highway, because you have some families who do stretches of walls. You have some towns, again, different crafts, trades. You have all kinds of different people who want to work together. And they're like, we'll do this. And they jump in with their community to make a difference. And, that just shows, I think, that you're not over managing. You're not kind of saying to people, no, this is the way I want to do it. Now, I don't want you to work by, by family units. I want you to work by location. I don't want you to work with people, your friends. I want you to work in this way. And that's like, you're so wedded to your own ideas that you can't see that people want to do the same thing that you want to get done, but just in a slightly different way. And so that's one of the good things that you want to do in leadership is you want to give the goal and the task, but you actually want to allow some freedom in how to get it done. And we see that here with Nehemiah in chapter 3 with the rebuilding of the wall. Except there is one exception of people who don't get inspired and they don't get to work. It says the nobles, they were not inspired. Quote, chapter 3, verse 5. The next section was repaired by the men of Tekoa, but their nobles would not put their shoulders to the work under their supervisors. So there's something about rich, powerful, famous, I don't know, people with status who don't want to be involved. I just think, I'm not sure what to make of that. That the people who already had enough going for them, that life, wasn't good. There was a ton of people being victimized and harmed by the broken down wall. Maybe there was crime. Maybe there was poverty. Maybe there was, you're getting things stolen from you, but maybe the nobles had enough private security or something, so it wasn't an issue for them. And so they don't want to bother building the wall. But all these other people do. And Yeah, I just think sometimes we know from Scripture that the rich, the powerful are not the ones that are the most eager to get done things for the common good. Now, there are exceptions to that in the Bible and in our lives, but it's just interesting that that's what's going on here. But yet, they just go forward. All right, number 9. Nehemiah prays frequently and briefly, and this is something I mentioned before when he shot up a prayer right after he was asked, what he needed, what he wanted. And here we see some more. So for 4, hear us, our God, for we are despised. So he calls out for God's help. 4:9, but we prayed to our God and posted a guard day and night to meet this threat. Uh, they have again trouble, and he's praying, God, stay with us. We got people threatening us. There's possibility of violence. This work might be stopped. 6:19, but I prayed, now strengthen my hands. Now this is again a great prayer. I just love that. Now strengthen my hands. Help me to type. Help me to think, Lord. Help me, Lord. All right, and then there's a bunch of other little prayers throughout this. That's just a sign of a godly leader. That's not what you're going to see from somebody else. Somebody who says, I need help and I'm aware of it and I'm asking for it. And I'm asking for you, God, to give me wisdom, ideas, and insight into what I should do. And I'm asking for your help, for your supernatural intervention to help, that you might prompt others to help, that you would give me favor with those who are powerful, those sorts of things. Okay. Um, Number 10, Nehemiah keeps rebuilding, but when threats emerge, he takes precautions to prevent further violence. Nehemiah 4:16-18, from that day on, half of my men did the work, while the other half were equipped with spears, shields, bows, and armor. The officers posted themselves behind all the people of Judah who were building the wall. Those who carried materials did their work with one hand and held a weapon in the other, and each of the builders wore his sword at his side as he worked. So what we have here is we have a set of guards or protection, uh, and then we have people building. Okay, then we have some people who are like carrying stuff. They carry a weapon in one hand and whatever their material is in the other. So they're kind of doing both. And then the builders who are using both their hands still have their sword at their side. And I think what's just interesting here, again, is the realism, I think, is the taking precautions that, look, we just want to build the wall. We're not looking for a fight. This is just self-defense. That sort of thing. But we will take precautions here. And I guess one of the things I'm just thinking about is like, one of the churches I was a pastor at, like we had our sound system stolen a couple times. And so it was like, all right, we need to get an alarm system, and we need to get better locks and that sort of stuff. And I guess that's just sort of the realism or something about leadership sometimes is you're just like, hey, we do need to have proper precautions in terms of not having abuse happen. So if we have predators or abusers somewhere, so we need to do background checks on children's ministry volunteers. That we can't have new people; they must be part of our community for a certain time. We get references, that sort of thing. And then similarly, like we don't have people from staff count the offering. We have very careful procedures on that. We have transparency. There are just some things like that where you take precautions, kind of practical precautions. Yes, and then you keep building, you keep working. You try not to let that distract you. It's not like you do full-time worry, full-time cautiousness, full-time attacking others. No, no, no. This is just a little thing so that we can keep working, so that we can keep doing the work we're called to do. And there's just some realism there about leadership. All right, number 11. Nehemiah defends the poor who are getting swindled and sold as slaves because they're starving and in too much debt. So here is from Nehemiah 5:1 and then verses 5 to 8. Now the men and their wives raised a great outcry against their fellow Jews. Some of our daughters have already been enslaved, but we are powerless because our fields and our vineyards belong to others. This is very troubling, right? Somebody's taken our daughters. I mean, is there anything worse than that line? Some of our daughters have already been enslaved. They've been taken away from us and been enslaved. And I'll go on to the next set of verses here. When I heard their outcry and these charges, I was very angry. I pondered them in my mind and then accused the nobles and officials. So I called together a large meeting to deal with them. They kept quiet because they could find nothing to say. So I continued, what you are doing is not right. And the point here is to listen to the poor, the enslaved, because of debt, because of being swindled and tricked, that there comes a time, we're coming back to the nobles here, who weren't wanting to help build the wall. Now they have enslaved people. They are taking advantage of others. And so there comes a time that's to defend the kind of people who are being harmed in situations. I'm just trying to describe what a leader does, and you don't want to do this. This isn't why you got into leadership. You're just wanting to build a wall and restore society or whatever. You're trying to do good. But there comes a time where you hear these outrages, these things, and there's no alternative than to kind of have a meeting and say, I'm hearing these things, and I don't. These are not right. This is not how we deal with people. I'm very concerned. And how did it get this way? And so there is this piece of confrontation, of standing up, of courage. I mean, this is very, very difficult. This is very messy. It's very ugly, unfortunately. And yet, how can we have good organizations or being a light in society if we turn a blind eye to the injustices that come to our nostrils, that come to our eyes, that come before us? Enslaved girls, in this case, that something has happened where people are taking advantage of families and the poor. I don't envy you when you're caught in these situations, when you're stuck saying, hey, there's a problem here. And it's great to do it in a diplomatic way. You don't have to maybe show your anger, but this is really part of the role, is to speak up when we're in a leadership role for those who have had their voices taken from them, and are vulnerable. All right, number 12, Nehemiah is an example of hard work, and personally, he lives frugally and generously. So Nehemiah 4:23, Nehemiah says, neither I nor my brothers, nor my men, nor the guards with me took our clothes. Each had his weapon, even when he went for water. Took off our clothes. Did I say that? The point is that he's just working night and day. He's sleeping. They're building the wall. He's just like laying down there on a mat or whatever, and sleeping right there on the job, and then getting back up and working again. They're not like going home and to the spa and getting a shower and a new set of clothes. They're just working hard. Even, and they're prepared with a weapon, even when they go for water. They're not relaxing and letting other people do the hard work. They're an example of hard work, of long hours, of sacrifice of being responsible. They carry their weapon. Even when they go for water, they're aware. And there's just something about this kind of leadership which is different from so many other kinds of leadership where the CEO walks around and they order, give me my this, give me my this, give me my newspaper, give me my coffee, where is my lunch, this is not the kind of sandwich that I wanted. That kind of just that I think is what is contrasted when you see leaders that are kind of these tyrants. You see a different picture here of what good leadership is. It's this kind of like, hey, I'm with you all in terms of hard work, and I'm not gonna relax and take a vacation when the rest of you have to keep working. I'm with you in this. And this isn't kind of prescriptive, like you literally always have to work long hours. You never take a break. You never shower, change your clothes. That's not it. That's not at all what this, it's not that it's never, it's just that this was an emergency situation, and he worked alongside the long hours in this situation, and that's appropriate. And sometimes you see like governors, at these when there's, let's say, in a huge snowstorm, right? Record snowstorm in the south or whatever, and there's 18 inches, and you see the governor, and they're sort of in, I don't know, not in their suit and tie or something like that. They're in sort of casual clothes, and they're sort of saying, hey, I'm trying to, my team, we're on it all the time. I'm not leaving the state. I'm going to where it's needed. We have a command center that is trying to bring supplies to what's needed. This is important. We're not relaxing right now, me and my team. And so again, just that kind of, it earns credibility to sort of say, hey, I realize that other people are suffering, and so I'm gonna keep working here, during this snowstorm for this 1 week, really hard with my team, rather than taking a lot of breaks or whatever. Okay, and then here's another example. Nehemiah 5:14, neither I nor my brothers ate the food allotted to the governor, but the earlier governors, those preceding me, placed a heavy burden on the people and took 40 shekels of silver from them in addition to food and wine. Their assistants also lorded it over the people, but out of reverence for God, I did not act like that. So we see again here that other leaders were kind of like living the high life on the money and the food and wine, and just living I'm the leader, I'm the governor, therefore I can live in a very luxurious way, and I'm lording it over people. And we see Jesus say precisely these words, right? Like the pagans lord it over you. That's not so with you. That's not how you're to lead. It's very interesting to see this language here as well. But Nehemiah says, no, simplicity, solidarity with people. We're in the same boat here. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna be photographed and videoed at the club, at the High Life, with the most expensive food and wine and vacations and all that kind of stuff while other people are suffering. No. That's not why I'm in this. I am trying to help people. I'm not in this for the luxuries. Again, okay, the regular vocation or regular vacation, those sort of things are appropriate. That Sabbath once a week, a day off is really appropriate. Those sort of things, yes, but just kind of giving the impression that you're in it because of the remuneration is just an ugly look, and that's not how godly leaders operate. All right, and then Nehemiah 5:17-18 he goes on to say, furthermore, 150 Jews and officials ate at my table, as well as those who came to us from the surrounding nations. I never demanded the food allotted to the governor because the demands were heavy on these people. So one thing he says is, what I did instead of living on the most expensive wine and food and lording it over everybody, he says instead I fed 150 people, including outsiders. So I used that money to make it stretch, to include a lot of people, which is just really great, right? And then similarly, he says, I didn't say, hey, I demand this and that and the other thing from these poor people, these working people. No, instead, he just says, no, like I can see that that's the last thing they need is like a heavy me bullying them into high taxes, which they can't even afford, and so I guess this is an argument for kind of a graduated tax or something like that, but just like to be sensitive to the poorest of people, that that when they're having difficulty putting food on the table, they shouldn't have to pay a ton to get food on the governor's table, that especially so that he might live, high on the hog. All right, number 13. Nehemiah refuses to sin even though others urge him to do so in order to protect himself. And that's a mouthful. But you see the story here in Nehemiah 6. And we'll read verses 10 and 13. Let us meet in the house of God, they said to him, inside the temple, and let us close the temple doors, because men are coming to kill you. By night they are coming to kill you. And Nehemiah explains, he says, that person had been hired to intimidate me so that I would commit a sin by doing this, and then they would give me a bad name to discredit me. So basically, he wasn't supposed to go into the house of God, but they were like, it's desperate. That's the place to go hide. You have to go in there. Like, don't worry about your spiritual, religious scruples, about, your those sort of things. You gotta really just save yourself here. And Nehemiah says, no, I'm not gonna. So I guess a situation like that would be where you're being, somebody says, well, if you tell the truth, you might lose your job here. So don't tell the truth, or this mistake, we got to hide this mistake that has been made, and you're just like, no, and if that's what gets me and I get fired or whatever, but I'm coming clean with what's going on here. I'm not doing a cover up. That sort of thing. Again, just shortcuts of integrity. Like, hey, yeah, I mean, we lost this money, so we need to, move some money over from this account to this account, even though we told the people that was for missions. We got to move it over here. Otherwise, we're going to have difficulty, but we can't tell people or they'll lose confidence in us. It's like, no. That Nehemiah says, no, I will not give up my integrity. Just because you're trying to, make me freak out and worry, I'll take the consequences, but I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna cheat. In this case, I'm not gonna go into the temple where I'm not allowed to go into the house of God. So we see another story about this in 2 Chronicles 26, 16 to 19, just a contrast. But after Uzziah became powerful. His pride led to his downfall. He was unfaithful to the Lord his God and entered the temple of the Lord to burn incense on the altar of incense. Azariah the priest with 80 other courageous priests of the Lord followed him in. They confronted King Uzziah and said, "It is not right for you, Uzziah, to burn incense to the Lord. That is for the priests, the descendants of Aaron, who have been consecrated to burn incense. Leave the sanctuary, for you have been unfaithful, and you will not be honored by the Lord God." So Uzziah uh, does get a big head. Saul did this as well, where they sort of like, I'm working with God, things are going okay. I can make excuses. I don't have to follow the rules for everybody. You know, I can get away with stuff because I'm special, because I'm the leader. And good people say, no, your integrity is really important. And what we see happen to Uzziah is in the rest of this passage, 2 Chronicles 26. Uzziah, who had a censer in his hand, ready to burn incense, became angry. While he was raging at the priests in their presence before the incense altar in the Lord's temple, leprosy broke out on his forehead. And so just an example here again, I see people, pastors who are like, well, the sexual immorality or whatever, but I needed the break, right? I needed my reward. Really yucky thinking like that, kind of distorted thinking that like I deserve this, I need this, and the rules don't apply to me. No. Yeah, we see Nehemiah say, no, I will not be intimidated. I'm not going in there. Even if, you're saying that something's going to happen to me unless I do. All right, number 14, Nehemiah urges people to celebrate the progress that has been made rather than focus on their past mistakes. And this is a poignant scene, Nehemiah 8, verses 9 and 10. For all the people have been weeping as they listen to the words of the law. So now the law is read to them, and they are realizing that they haven't been keeping it. So they're in the end discouraged. They're quite discouraged. And Nehemiah said, "Go and enjoy choice food and sweet drinks, and send some to those who have nothing prepared. This day is holy to our Lord. Do not grieve, for the joy of the Lord is your strength." And this is just a really powerful passage where he says, I know we haven't done it. I feel bad too. I'm heartbroken too, but we're going to do it now. Now we're going to do it. Let's eat some good food, let's drink, and let's celebrate and toast to a new start that we're going to, and let's share with others so that there are others, no one goes away hungry. We see that also in 1 Corinthians 11, where Paul is really upset that some are going away hungry while others are getting drunk at the Lord's Supper. And so we see Nehemiah say, no, give some to everybody. And he says, the day is holy. This is a good day. We're starting now. And we didn't know, or we had forgotten, or we had neglected it. But do not grieve, for the joy of the Lord is your strength. And it reminds me a little bit of like AA groups, Alcoholics Anonymous, where it's like, let's just in the sense of celebrating the wins. I mean, somebody said, I've had 30 days sober, 3 times. I'm not celebrating it now. I'm not celebrating it until 60 days or something like that. And somebody said to them, no, we celebrate that 30 days. The people in the group need to know that. And I mean, they need to celebrate. And if you don't, you got to celebrate. And there's something, that alcoholic who it's their 3rd time getting through 30 days, and then they didn't make it, or they've struggled beyond that point, and so they don't want to celebrate anymore. But there is something important about saying, no, we're going forward from here. And Nehemiah is sensitive to the people. I just think it's interesting. I think that's an aspect of a leader, is saying eat and drink. Because human beings need food and drink. They need rest too. And so for leaders to sort of say, be human, enjoy food and drink for this good occasion, share it around to everyone. There's just a knowledge and awareness of people's humanity that we had a restaurant friend who said food is love, and I think good leaders do recognize that. That that's part of caring for people, and we've had, I've seen some pastors who are like, I don't want to have granola bars and donuts and in the foyer with coffee and tea and lemonade and hot chocolate. I don't want that in the lobby. People should be fine with water. I've heard that. I've kind of heard that, and that may be okay. I don't know exactly if all churches. I know you have big messes when you allow people to have food and drinks in the lobby, and people spill and all kinds of stuff. I think especially those hot chocolate stains on the carpet of the lobby. But I do think there's something about. Again, I just think there's something about being too frugal there, where it's like, hey, we're celebrating this as a staff at our church, and we're gonna get Chipotle here to celebrate, and people say, well, are you sure about that? Like let's be, we don't want to spend the church's money. And it's like, well, there are some times where we just say, hey, we're going to celebrate this particular thing. So I do think there's something about good leadership in this little anecdote where Nehemiah doesn't want them to just be utterly discouraged. All right. And then Nehemiah problem solves when problems reemerge. So he goes back to Persia, okay? And then all sorts of, is it entropy? The kind of mess that kind of emerges. There's foreigners in the temple, in a room, and there's the Levites are not getting paid their tithes, and so they're out in the fields. People are working on the Sabbath. People are married, with people of other religions. There's all kinds of problems that he has to go in and then just piece by piece kind of resolve. And I already mentioned this, but I'll just say again, oftentimes leaders come and say to me, I'm just discouraged because there are problems in my organization. And I find myself having to put out fires. And I do think, yes, okay, get to the root of it so that it doesn't occur over and over again. I mean, it's not great if the exact same problem over and over, we've just put a Band-Aid on it and then it keeps coming. So get to the root of it, try to fix it, try to have a good system, sure. But there's no end to the problems in leadership. There really isn't. It is part of the job. And the reason we have you as the leader is we do trust you to be wise and to make good decisions with others on addressing problems. So don't be discouraged as a leader when problems crop up. That's sort of what the nature of the work is to address problems, as Nehemiah had to do here. And then my last point here is Nehemiah appoints trustworthy people. He says in 13:13, I put Shelemiah the priest, Zadok the scribe, and a Levite named Pedaiah in charge of the storerooms, and made Hanan, son of Zakur, son of Mattaniah, their assistant, because they were considered trustworthy. And so looking for people who are reliable, people trust, they're people of integrity, they do what they say. There's not a bunch of lying and deception and about them. And I thought, too, of the parallel idea that Paul says in 2 Timothy 2:2. He says, and the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others. And so, we just see good volunteers in organizations, or we see people who are faithful, who are wise, who speak up and say things that are caring and, kind of see both sides of issues. And so those are the kinds of people that we want to delegate to and give responsibility to. That's part of this thing too, is to look for people who are trustworthy and to give them responsibility to manage things. So, just to conclude this lecture, what are the broken walls and survivors that that need restoration? Um, we see pain in our city, um, in our cities. We may see things in our own lives. We may see broken people. We see problems. There are broken walls. There are people who are hurting. And so that is that heart that hurts God's heart, that we hear about, that we notice, those broken walls, those people suffering. That's kind of like the broken walls of Jerusalem after the exile, who had for 140 years had been kind of just you know puttering by, what's the word? Anyway, just kind of muttering through. That's the kind of situation that leaders are called to walk into and to try to bring healing, try to better the situations, to ask God how they might be used, and use their brains and use their physical ability, and use sacrifice and to work with others. And it's very fulfilling. It's very fulfilling. There's joy in seeing walls rebuilt, the text being read again to a people, and people saying, "We're with you. Let's do this," for overcoming obstacles and critics and enemies, and still being able to kind of work faithfully forward. It's fulfilling work. It's good work. So I urge you to continue to go forward with the broken walls that you see. That is why we do leadership. It's not so that everybody thinks we're great. I mean, that's just not really anything here in Nehemiah. Like that, it's all about him, that he's looking for glory, that he's looking for recognition. He's just sort of putting one foot in front of the other, trying to resolve problems, to alleviate suffering, and to bring healing the best he can, restoration. So again, this is sort of the a motto for leaders, because God wants to protect and restore vulnerable people. We can prayerfully act to and engage in this leadership work. That's all for this lecture on Nehemiah. My name is Andy Rowell, and thanks for listening.